And now, ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America Audio, with your host, Tim Binnall.
Hello out there, my friends. This is Tim Binnall of BinnallofAmerica.com with the return of BoA Audio Season 3. It is February 2nd, 2008. Happy Groundhog Day, folks. We're back from hiatus. I'm feeling refreshed. I'm really happy to be back and excited about bringing you all new episodes of BoA Audio Season 3. We've got a ton of great stuff coming up in the pipeline, but we're going to save all of the superfluous talk about BoA and BoA Audio for the close of the program, because I know you're ready to dig into some fresh BoA Audio goodness. We kick things off here this week with our guest, longtime BoA Audio friend, Greg Bishop of Project Beta and UFOmystic.com fame. As I note here in the beginning of the interview, Greg has his finger on the pulse of the UFO field, so I couldn't think of anyone better to bring on the program to close the book on 2007 and dissect the past year in ufology. We're going to cover all the big stories from 2007, including the O'Hare case, the Symington story, the French UFO files release, the Roswell 60th anniversary, the drone photo craze of the summertime, the Kucinich UFO flap, and the disclosure push of November. We're going to get Greg's take on all of these events and discuss what they mean from a big picture perspective for the field of ufology. Plus, we're going to discuss esoteric trends of 2007, what was hot, what was not, where are things going in 2008. We're going to talk about Greg's piece on Long John Nebel from UFO Mystic, his appreciation for the contactee movement, and of course, tons and tons more. The interview clocks in at 2 hours, and it is a very fast, fun, and loose edition of the program, and the perfect vehicle to kick off the 2008 portion of BoA Audio Season 3. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Greg Bishop, let me give you a little bit of background on him. Greg Bishop became interested in UFOs at a very early age. He has no idea why. In 1991, he co-founded a magazine entitled The Excluded Middle, for the purpose of educating himself first, and secondly, passing on the info to interested readers. TEM was a journal of UFOs, conspiracy research, psychedelia, and new science. It can be found online at www.excludedmiddle.com. The book, Wake Up Down There, was a collection of articles from the magazine published in the year 2000. Greg's writing has appeared in the LA Weekly, 40 Times, UFO Magazine, and Magical Blend, among others, and in the book-length anthologies Conspiracy and Cyberculture, Zen and the Art of Close Encounters, Kooks, and You Are Being Lied To. In 2005, his book, Project Beta, was an attempt to set the record straight on the Paul Bennewitz disinformation saga. His third and newest title, Weird California, was published in March of 2006. His internet show, Radio Mysterioso, can be heard on Sundays from 8 to 10 Pacific Time at www.killradio.org. When not writing, Greg can be found in the southwestern deserts of the U.S., or flying his paraglider above vertiginous cliffs and mountains, sometimes with a propeller strapped to his back. Successful bribes include new Mexican cuisine, recordings of outsider music, rare contact ebooks, tickets to baseball games, and selected original artwork. His websites are www.ufomystic.com and www.excludedmiddle.com. Definitely want to check those out. They are top-notch websites. I know you want to get right into the action here, so without any further ado, let's rock and roll. This interview was recorded on January 16th, 2008. Greg Bishop talking about 2007, the year in ufology, on BoA Audio Season 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special edition of Binnall of America Audio. We're back from our hiatus, and I wanted to kick off the second half of the season here with a longtime friend of the show, one of the very first guests we had on the program, Greg Bishop, author of Project Beta, and one of the great minds behind UFOmystic.com. He's also got a website, excludedmiddle.com. He hosts the podcast show Radio Mysterioso. He had me on as a guest last spring. He's the man. He's also not only on the first season of Binnall of America Audio, he was on the baseball special last year. So, like I said, he's a longtime friend of the show. Greg, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Tim.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to having you on the show for a while, and I knew you were the perfect guest to kick off the second half of Season 3. What I wanted to do with you here on the show was, since you run, well, no, you don't run it, but since you write for UFO Mystic, you've got your finger on the pulse of the UFO field, definitely had your finger on the pulse of the field over the past year. And I kind of wanted to look back at 2007 at some of the big events and get your thoughts on them and kind of share my thoughts on them and really sort of look back on these events and give some big picture analysis to what went down in 2007 as far as the UFO phenomenon goes, especially, like I said, in a big picture sort of way, in a public relations kind of way. You know, how did these stories affect the people that aren't like you and me who follow the UFO field but are kind of on the mainstream? And a lot of big stories sort of broke into the mainstream this past year in ufology, so we're going to sort of dig into that kind of thing. And as I said, since you have your finger on the pulse of the UFO field, being one of the great guys at UFO Mystic, I think you're the perfect guy to do that. Is that cool?
Sure, fine, let's do it.
And I'm sure a lot of people are saying, you know, come on, man, it's February 2nd when this episode is going to air, and they're like, oh, it's already a month into 2008. What are we looking back at 2007 for? But, you know, for starters, a lot of people probably, you know, just sort of throw together stuff at the end of the year and don't really take the time to think about it. And I haven't really seen a lot of big picture looks at what went on in ufology. So at least we're digging into something here that I don't think has been done yet.
I haven't seen it anywhere.
Exactly. So, you know, now we can look at this stuff, and in a couple of years' time, we can look back and pick up the episode and be like, all right, well, what did happen in ufology in 2007? I guess we should start out with the first big event of 2007, actually almost practically on the very first day of 2007, and that was the O'Hare story breaking into the mainstream. Of course, there was a UFO sighting at O'Hare Airport in Chicago. It actually happened in early November, but managed to somehow break into the mainstream news the very first couple days of the year. Talk a little bit about that story and your thoughts on how it kind of exploded like a month after it happened in the first place.
Well, as I remember it, there was a sighting at O'Hare by a couple pilots and a few people working on the ground in, what was it, September or November of 2006?
I think it was November.
Yeah, and then the story for some reason didn't break until, like you said, the first of the year. And it just it took on a life of its own, and it dominated the news for at least a few days. And then somebody came out with a picture of it, I think, like a month later. The sighting, what it was this big, I guess it was a disc-type thing that was up in the clouds, just kind of floating there. It didn't move very much till suddenly they said it rose up really fast and like punched a hole in the clouds, which I've never seen anything do, and it sounded very strange. The funny thing was the news reports that I saw, the kind of the replays on the YouTube and Google video and all that, they didn't really make too much fun of it. I didn't get the sense of the giggle factor at the end, which I thought was good. And that story had, you know, kind of a staying power. Then a few months later, what's that group that Bernard Hayes has? They put together a report about it. The report said it was very strange. We can't prove exactly what it was. There were some trained observers there, and it was a real event, but we don't know what it was because we don't have enough data. It sounds like, unfortunately, a typical UFO sighting.
Yeah.
But the value, like I said, was that I didn't see way less of the giggle factor than there used to be.
Definitely. I thought that was one of the big aspects of the O'Hare story, was that not only did it break into the mainstream, but it also was treated with a pretty good amount of seriousness. And I think it may have been one of the first UFO cases in the contemporary times, I'd say, you know, since the 90s or whatever, or at least since Phoenix Lights, where the whole issue of, like, national security kind of came up. Like, a lot of people in the UFO field have been saying for a while, you know, why aren't they addressing the issue of national security with UFOs? And that sort of became, finally the media did kind of take a look at the national security aspect of it.
Yeah, well, the Haitian people like that said, well, this should be a matter of at least not national security, but air transport security, because if things are flying around up there, that especially over a busy airport, we ought to know what they are, because they're going to affect traffic and flight patterns and all that, and it could cause a problem. I don't think UFOs have ever caused planes to run into each other. I'm really not sure about that. I can't think of any cases where that's happened. I can think of cases where planes supposedly ran into them, but not having planes run into each other. But they were saying, and since he's got a bunch of people on his on that study and on his board that are pilots and air traffic people and former government officials, I think they took it seriously. They thought it should be, they should take a serious look at it and report their findings, and they did. But like I said, unfortunately, they didn't. They didn't come up with anything. They just said this appeared to be a real event, but we don't know what it was.
And what would you say, like, the tenor was in the UFO community surrounding the O'Hare case? Because I sort of was watching the debate from afar, and there was definitely a debate about it. What would you say, like, what was the point of view, I guess you could say, of the people in the UFO world?
I didn't see that much debate. I kind of looked on the updates list for a while when the story first broke. And some people, had this kind of cautious attitude. I can't remember or name names. But a lot of people, which unfortunately I saw this, thought it was like the second coming, Oh, this is going to be the one.
Yeah.
This is going to break it open. Now everybody's going to know that it's real important. And, of course, it really didn't do that. All it did was show that there's a tiny little bit of the cover, that laughter curtain that's being peeled away. Just a little bit, which is good. People got to be patient.
Exactly, yeah. That was probably the good aspect of it. And I thought also that it did sort of bring ufology a little bit back into the news in a sense, because there hadn't been a big major U.S. case within this decade, if you will, from 2000 to 08 or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
No, there hasn't. I talked to people after, there was a UFO conference scheduled for September 11th. September 13th of 2001.
Yeah.
That my friend Miles was doing. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen. But I noticed after that, nobody really cared about UFOs for about 2 or 3 years.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's because it's a pastime of people who have time and psychic space to worry about other things. And at that point, most people didn't. Even the sightings went down. Or maybe people reporting them went down, I don't know, but the sightings went away too. There weren't as many sightings, there weren't as many abduction reports. Why is that? Everybody was thinking about something else.
Yeah, yeah. And
maybe the phenomenon was still there, but it's just, it's like when somebody runs into a classroom with a banana and starts stabbing somebody and everybody thinks it was a knife. It's because that's what they expect.
Yeah.
They ask later, and 80% of the class thinks it was actually a big shiny knife, and a couple of people say, no, it was a banana. I think that people's mindset determines really importantly what they see, what they feel, how they interpret things. So, as things kind of go back to baseline, the UFO stories start coming out again.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like maybe the O'Hare story brought the UFO subject back into the mainstream a little bit, and then sort of kind of set the trend for the rest of the year as far as stories on the UFO subject getting more mainstream news.
Yeah, yeah.
It seemed like little UFO stories all of a sudden would kind of get a little more press coverage than I would have expected. Maybe the popularity of the O'Hare story had something to do with that.
It helped open the door back up, yeah, certainly.
Now, do you think this case has any sort of like long-term cachet? I know you probably don't I know you probably haven't poured over the details of the O'Hare case too much, but do you think it'll be something that we'll hear about as time goes on, or do you think it's just going to be sort of an isolated thing that'll be looked back on and there won't be much to it?
If it wasn't for that report, I don't think the book would be closed, because a lot of UFO people read that report.
Yeah.
And oh, wait, here we go. Here's the conclusion. This investigation has determined that, based on the testimony of multiple eyewitnesses in different locations at O'Hare International Airport, a small physical and apparently solid object hovered over the United Airlines concourse area for at least 10 minutes or more, but was not detected either by radar or visually by air traffic controllers in the tower. For this reason, the object is considered a definite potential threat to flight operations at O'Hare. That was their conclusion. Something was there. And the thing was that the report was, what, like 200 pages or something?
Oh, wow.
It was a fat report, man. There was, There are weather reports going out, 10 miles from the airport, and humidity readings and cloud ceiling readings and all kinds of. It was exhaustively detailed. I mean, more than a UFO organization has ever put into a report on anything.
Yeah.
So, there's not much more that people in ufology can say except for that serious people looked at this problem seriously and figured out there was something real there. So, what else can they say? How can it can't, keep going. There's no more questions about it, really.
Yeah.
That anybody else has come up with. I mean, since Haish and all his buddies there put out that report, which, like I said, was exceedingly thorough. It's the best UFO report I've ever read.
Nice. That's quite an endorsement.
From the bits of it that I have read. Well, I like him. He's actually he actually pisses off some UFO people because they consider him a skeptic. And I consider him somebody that's very interested, that's trying to do something that can break through this laughter curtain or most serious people don't think it's a serious subject, and he's taking it seriously, like Jacques Vallée said back in the 60s. We got to take this seriously because there's a lot of people having these experiences, and you can't just laugh at them.
Exactly, yeah.
Science looks bad if we don't take this subject seriously.
Sometimes you're on the right track if you're pissing off the UFO community, sometimes.
You got to piss off both sides every once in a while, and that way I know you're doing really well.
I guess there's really not much more to say about the O'Hare case because that sort of, like I said, sort of set the tenor for the rest of the year. And the next big sort of breakout story for ufology was the Symington story, where the Phoenix Lights case kind of reinvented itself all of a sudden. It was the 10-year anniversary of the Phoenix Lights, and all of a sudden former Arizona Governor Symington came out and said he did see a UFO and became a fixture on the UFO circuit all of a sudden. And like I said, the Phoenix Lights story kind of reinvented itself. I guess talk a little bit about that whole situation.
I thought that Symington was kind of disingenuous. A lot of people thought this, by making fun of it at first and then saying, I actually really saw it 10 years after the fact and after he's out of politics. But I don't know. I mean, the guy said that he remember he had that news conference and he brought out one of his assistants dressed in an alien costume?
Yeah.
To make fun of it. Mm-hmm. And people asked him, the UFO people anyway, or the disclosure people said, why did you do that? A lot of people asked him that, and he said, well, I thought the security of the state was at stake. And if we'd taken it seriously, it would have caused a panic, which is it's a real weaselly answer. If he had taken it seriously, people would have looked at it seriously. What are they going to get scared about? And I think maybe some other stuff was going on, like somebody in the Air Force or the Marines or whatever the base is. Oh, there's a base there near Phoenix, just north of Phoenix. They might have told him just to shut up about it and don't worry. And that might be part of the story that isn't coming out. And the other thing was, I guess he had kind of a checkered past, and after he got out of office, he was being investigated for something or other and had to go to trial. So his political career was basically over anyway, so he really had nothing to lose, which is why he just came out and said, yeah, well, I seen him too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he did it because he wanted to be involved in something again or what, because he was on the Larry King special after that and moderated a panel about the subject. And
yeah, he's, like I said, he's really become a fixture now in the UFO scene in some respects. A lot of the exopolitics people kind of have hitched their wagon to the story in a lot of ways. What would you say the attitude within ufology was at the time? Now, I remember my personal perspective was I was kind of pissed off about the whole thing because I thought it was kind of like what you say, Weasley, that he did the press conference and had the alien guy, and now he wants to kind of switch sides here. I was a little chagrined about the whole thing. What would you say the attitude in ufology was? Like you said, the O'Hare thing was treated as the second coming. Was this kind of had the same attitude, or were people more mad about the press conference thing still, or what was the attitude, you think?
I think he was just kind of people really didn't care because it was kind of an attitude of too little too late,
Yeah.
And I think that was a general, at least among most people, they're serious about it and follow it on a, kind of a daily basis, that too little too late, not really anything to worry about. If the exopolitics people want to put them up on a stick and run around with them, that's fine.
Yeah. Now, do you think that him coming out and saying that he saw the UFO, but, did the press conference to chill everybody out, if you will. Do you think that kind of gives credence in some ways to elements and theories of, like, government cover-up type of thing?
Well, yeah, like I said, maybe, I'm saying maybe, there's no proof of this, but maybe he was told to downplay it, and that's what he came up with, have somebody come out in a silly alien suit. I don't know. Yeah,
and the unfortunate part is, has anyone, I don't know, he hasn't really sort of addressed that as all that I know of, or has anyone even asked him if he was, like, coerced into that kind of situation?
I don't know if anybody's asked him that. And you know what he'd say is, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, because if he was, that would be one of the first things he'd say.
Well, no, I mean, if he was told not to, I think he would just say, forever he's going to say no.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if he was going to say something, he already would have. You know what I mean? Like, we already would have.
Oh, yeah, he may have. I don't know.
Were you intrigued or interested, or did you find it interesting that the Phoenix Lights case, on a lot of these things, they kind of just rehashed the story on the anniversary, but like I said, this one kind of became reinvented. It had a whole new element added to it. I don't recall too many stories. Usually they remain pretty static once the events happen, but this one kind of had an extra new layer added to it. Did you find any of that interesting?
You mean the layer that he suddenly said, yeah, I saw them?
Yeah, all of a sudden, 10 years later, now he's coming out, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, there's more to this than we thought, kind of thing.
Well, to me, it's kind of like people in the military seeing something, being told to shut up about it, and then, 30 years later or so, they go sit in a room with Stephen Greer or somebody on camera and say, yeah, I did see stuff. Yeah, I didn't know what it was. Yes, I was told to shut up about it.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing, but the guy's a politician, and he's a squirrely, more squirrely seemingly than other politicians that manage to cover their tracks better, so it has a little less credence, at least to me. And I think that the UFO rank and file have pretty much the same attitude. It's not, it's not something new. It's more like, let's concentrate on what happened back then and see if we can find out more about it there, because Symington isn't going to tell us anymore. What's he going to say? I saw something. He's not in government anymore. He's not really respected as an administrator really anymore due to his background. So, why go back and revisit it with him?
We kind of saw more ufology in politics later on in the year. I would have said, midway through the year that maybe that would have opened the door to more politicians kind of like talking about the UFO thing. But then we saw kind of later in the year that when that happened, it wasn't such a good thing for them. So probably the trend may have started and then ended all within the same year. Yeah,
maybe so. But like I said, because of the mainly because of the O'Hare thing, I think there's 0.5% less laughter applied to UFO stories than there used to be.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something, right in the middle of it. If it happened out in the middle of nowhere at a suburban airport somewhere, nobody would have cared. But it happened in the middle of one of the largest cities in the United States with a bunch of trained observers on the ground, multiple witnesses. So it was something that had to be taken a little more seriously, or could be taken more seriously from the point of view of news-reading, news-watching public.
Yeah. All right. Well, then the next sort of like dual event, I guess you could say, and it's sort of like a May-December romance in a way, because one happened in May and one happened in December, was the French UFO document release, the tepid news, I guess you could say, for a little while in the springtime, and then the Japanese UFO disclosure, in quotes, flap that kind of happened in December. And I guess you could branch them all under the umbrella, and I also, the UK released some UFO files that may have happened in early 08, but I'm not sure. But anyway, you can sort of branch those all under the umbrella of like an international disclosure movement, if you will. What do you think about that whole thing? We've seen this kind of developing over the course of the last couple of years, a little more drip, drip, drip from international sources as far as disclosure goes. Obviously, the Japanese thing was more of a blow-off, but at the same time, it was an international UFO story, if you will. So what do you think about that release of UFO information that's starting to trickle out a little bit?
Well, I think it's nice that the more files are being released, but I think in every case with the British and the French and I don't think the Americans are releasing any more UFO files than they have. Look, my general feeling about release of UFO information is anything that's released is not really going to tell us any more than we already know, except that governments know a lot more about UFO facts than we do, but they don't know about where they come from, what causes them if they're unidentified. And I think the documents are going to bear that out. It's just going to say there was something very weird and we took it seriously. But a lot of people know that already, that if there's something that the authorities don't know about, they want to find out as much about it as they can.
Yeah. And
because of the nature of UFO stuff, it's hard to, nobody really knows what the purpose, origin, or whatever of these objects or whatever causes these sightings are. So it's going to be a lot more data of, we saw this, we took these measurements, we talked to these people.
Yeah.
What's good about it is, since it's from sources where people were real careful about the way they gathered information, the database might be skewed in a way that is helpful. I think that's the good thing about releasing more of this information, whether it be from France or Britain or the United States or, well, even Japan, I guess. That was just a statement, not a release of information.
Yeah.
So, more data points, enter those into the database, see if patterns emerge. That's the good part of it. Now, whether it's going to say, well, we know there's aliens coming from other planets, I don't think that's going to happen from any of those countries.
Yeah. It's more just like, whether it's a French sighting or an English sighting, it's just a sighting. And like I had Michael Sala on the show, and he kind of made the point that, we have enough sighting reports, we need more of an analysis point of view, and maybe if they had released more of an analysis type of thing, it would help more than just a sighting report.
Yeah. No, that's a sober analysis to me of this release of information. It can only help. I don't think none of it's going to be any big revelation, but it'll be another little brick in that, either taken out of or put into whatever you want to call it, into that wall of understanding and possibly getting to the bottom of whatever this is, which I think it's in the large picture, I don't know if most of us has gotten to the point where we could understand what these things are on their own terms, because it's coming from a place that I don't think we have a philosophical and physical and philosophical and physical viewpoint that we can get our minds around it yet.
Yeah.
But more data points helps move in that direction. I think we're going to have to start thinking about the world and the universe and reality and time and causality in a different way to be able to get a handle on what UFOs and other paranormal phenomena are.
Yeah, and mainstream people just aren't ready for that.
Yeah, well, there's the idea that an old guard, the old regime has to die out basically for new ideas to emerge, because there aren't any people fighting against it at that point, trying to hold down their version of reality that they grew up with.
Yeah, and so maybe someday when the idea that UFOs are real is just sort of a given fact, then maybe more people will be ready to sort of wrap their minds around it.
Yeah, that's a way to describe it. Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't think anybody has the words to describe what they are, but the way our minds change, the way we look at things, and the way we look at things as a society, and the way that science looks at things will change. And it's probably not going to happen till, who knows, till 20, 30 years after we're gone. I don't know.
Well, hopefully you and I will still be around in 20 years.
That's why I put our names at the end.
All right.
We could live 100 more years. I don't know what kind of gerontology drugs they have coming out. I keep hoping.
I can kind of foresee your answer, I guess you could say. But do you think any other country will ever sort of come out with any sort of definitive UFO statement, sort of like what we thought we were getting from Japan, but it turned out it was more of a joke? But do you think anyone else will come out with anything like that, or do you think that there's kind of like a set mindset within world governments that it's best not even to deal with that right now?
I think the way that power is structured right now all over the world, where there's people at the top telling people at the bottom what to do, makes it very unlikely that somebody's going to come out and as the head of a government and say, this is what it is, this is as much we know, and we don't know much more than you do. I think that's what it's going to be. I mean, people have said, oh, the U.S. government, other governments know that there's aliens coming from other planets. I do not know that. I think that they think there might be, but they're not going to admit that. Why admit that? Because that works into the power base. That works into we're in charge and you're not.
Yeah.
To admit that means, oh, well, there's something I don't know about and I don't know much about and I can't do anything about it. Sorry.
All right. That's pretty much all I really have on the international disclosure front. So we'll move to the next big event of 2007 and one that you were pretty well entangled with, and that's the Roswell 60th anniversary. It was sort of the year of anniversaries all around in esoterica. Phoenix Lights, Roswell, Kenneth Arnold, Shag Harbor, Mothman. I'm sure there's many other ones too. But, of course... Heaven's Gate, there you go, yeah. So there was a lot of anniversaries, it seems, here in 2007. And, of course, the big daddy is Roswell. You said you went down there, so I guess just talk a little bit about the vibe of the big 60th anniversary for Roswell. Personally, I felt like there wasn't as much buzz as there has been in the past, and I thought there would be a little more, but it didn't feel like it. But you'd probably know because you were on the ground in Roswell.
Yeah, well, the buzz is different because it wasn't like the 50th anniversary, And they've been doing it every year since then, so they kind of wanted to make a big deal out of it and have people come out. They had two different speaking schedules going. One that the city put on by itself, and one that the UFO Museum put on by itself, and none of the speakers were shared.
So like dueling conferences?
Yeah, it kind of was.
Weird.
The funny thing was, I mean, that I didn't hear anybody at the museum. Not that I talked to a lot of people there. I talked to a lot of the speakers there, and I didn't hear anybody at the city's facility in the conference center really bad mouthing the other. I mean, there didn't seem to be any competition on a democratic level. Maybe at the upper level, obviously, because they had their own two conferences. But both the museum and the city put on a good amount of speakers. It's funny though, the museum seemed to concentrate on like the superstars of ufology. They had Stan Friedman, and they had who else did they have?
Jesse Marcel.
Yeah, they had Jesse Marcel Jr. there. I talked to him. He's a nice guy. Paul Davids was there, selling copies of Roswell and talking more about the production and his experience and since making the film. Because I asked him once, I said, what got you interested? And Paul said, well, I had my own sighting, and he described it to him. It was right over his house here in L.A. about 15 or 20 years ago.
Oh, weird.
It was kind of a spectacular sighting. It was like this I think it was this kind of oblong, silvery-shaped thing that was floating right over his house. And he went chasing it in his car and couldn't find it.
Oh, wow.
And over at the conference center, the Roswell Museum had Nick, it had me. I'm trying to think who was there. Oh, wait, I have a schedule here right in front of me. How convenient.
Nice. Go Rightly, he must have been there, right?
Yes. He gave a presentation about were the early contactees ritual magicians, which was great. I love that one. And it was one. You know what? I liked it because it was one of those things where you said, "Damn it, I wish I'd have done that one."
Yeah, it sounds weird. It sounds good. That's very Go Rightly.
Yes, it is. He might have been asked back. I'm going back this year.
Nice.
If they have it, they kind of said, "Would you be willing to speak again?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And
do you drink or anything?
Maybe I should get a drink of something. Yeah.
Yeah, you sound like you're dying over there.
Oh, Peter Robbins spoke at the one at the city conference. It's funny, Peter Robbins. People think of him as the guy who wrote the book on the Rendlesham case.
Yeah.
But his interests range far. I think he's doing lectures now on Wilhelm Reich.
Yeah, I saw that. And he's done a lot of work on the James Forrestal case, and he's done some stuff in UFOs in the media, too, that's been pretty interesting. So he gets pigeonholed, but he's actually quite diverse. He's huge in Japan, For real. He's been over to Japan a number of times. Oh, yeah, Richard Dolan was also at the city conference. And what would you say, like, the buzz was on the ground there? Sort of more just like a party element, everybody from the UFO field kind of hanging out because it was the big party birthday for Roswell. Were people Was it kind of like been there, done that, because it's just been done so often, the Roswell scene, if you will?
Yeah, it was pretty much, it seemed like a business as usual and a homecoming and a let's hang out and talk. And it was the funny, what I noticed that I wrote about when I wrote actually a couple dispatches from there and put them on UFO Mystic, that people didn't seem to really care about differences of opinion, which I thought was nice. I didn't see all these, because at the 97 one, all I remember are these, contentious debates.
Yeah.
About, was this person here at this time, or was it a weather balloon, or it wasn't? I mean, I saw the debate between Kevin Randall and Carl Flock, and there were raised voices in that. But this one, it seems like, well, you know what? They didn't really have any skeptics there, and I would consider Carl Flock a skeptic. It seemed like everybody was, getting along great, no matter what their real viewpoint. There wasn't that ufological squabbling that I usually notice at the edges of, or sometimes in the middle of a UFO conference, which was nice. Oh, another person there was Farah Yodozu, who has been getting a lot of speaking dates in the last couple of years, which is good.
Yeah, she's great. She was on Binnall of America last season, so she was
on my show last year, too.
Nice. What do you think was the cause for the lack of strife, if you will, amongst the people there? Is the lack of skeptics, or do you think maybe just that the case hasn't really evolved much in the last 10 years since the 97 situation? Well,
right before the conference, there was that, strangely timed release. I'm saying strangely in quotes.
Yeah.
Of that the deathbed statement of, what was it, Walter Haut?
Mm-hmm, the Haut affidavit.
Yeah. And people were very interested in that, wanted to see it. But what I heard, which I guess might be part of the squabbling, I don't know. It wasn't overt squabbling. What I basically heard about it is that it was the statement was taken by somebody else, and at that point, Haut was not in the best mental condition, so he might have been, willing to say whatever he thought he was supposed to say, which makes it really not worth so much. And even if he was in his right mind and saying what he said, he's not really saying anything different than he did while he was alive, or than other people have said, was that they saw something they thought was not from this world that was in Roswell in 1947.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of buzz around the affidavit, actually, the Haut affidavit, where a lot of people were really excited about it at the time, but it didn't seem to break the story, if you will. It didn't break the Roswell back, despite what everyone had kind of hoped. Yeah,
it's one of those things that makes some people in the UFO field very excited, but outside of the UFO field, nobody really cares, and it makes no real great impact.
Yeah.
Which is what most of these things are.
That seems to be the case, yeah. A lot of things, they'll break through the mainstream for a couple days, but they never have that staying power that you think they might. Do you think that Roswell sort of turned the corner in 1997 with the 50th anniversary, and it's going downhill a little bit now? It's maybe fading somewhat. Maybe it'll explode again sort of for the 75th anniversary, but we're kind of in a down cycle of Roswell.
Yeah, probably. Because like you said, nothing really new has come out about it. And, something I was thinking of right just now when I was making my last statement was that let's say in 1978, if a stealth fighter crashed, and somebody happened upon it, and they were just big pieces, they wouldn't know what the hell it was.
Yeah.
They wouldn't think it was an airplane. They might guess that it's an airplane, but it's all flat, it's black, and it's got this kind of weird, if it's broken, I guess I think they've got kind of a honeycombed carbon fiber kind of surface. I don't know. I'm not privy to these things. But, there's the possibility that people would have not known what they were looking at that point. And the military, of course, did, and they tell people to shut up about it. I mean, that's just a possibility there. Maybe there were aliens. Maybe it was some secret test thing. I do not know. Of course, there's Nick's book that combines elements of all those things that made a lot of people very angry and I'm glad it did, because it starts controversy and gets people talking.
But do you think that ufology's over-reliance on Roswell maybe finally kind of coming to a close. It'll still obviously be held up on a pedestal as like the Keystone UFO case, but at the same time, maybe people are kind of starting to move on a little bit from it, I hope. Do you think that's
well,
the
I'm
case?
glad they're moving on from it, because other things like, people's reactions and how does the phenomenon interact with people on a personal and psychological level and things like that nobody really looks at. All they look at is ground traces and what was flying and what angle was it at and how big was it and how long was it here. That's been done to death, and we've got so much of that data that we don't know what to do with it, which is why I said maybe the government disclosure stuff will help a little bit. But there's so many other aspects to the phenomenon that nobody's really concentrated on.
And what do you talk a little bit more about that then? What do you think? Obviously, you kind of touched on them, but talk more about that. What elements should they be looking at?
Well, like I said, I wrote a column about this. What about subjective reactions to UFO encounters? How did it make the person feel? What did they think was happening? Were there any lasting effects? Do they have nightmares about it later? Do they have dreams about it? Did it happen again? Did the person see things later? The phenomenon relates to people on different levels than just seeing things.
Yeah.
And I don't think that a lot of UFO investigators ask those questions about people. They just ask them about physical aspects of it, not mental aspects, not, dare I say it, spiritual aspects of the phenomenon. Because I've talked to people where they said, their value system got changed, their religious views got changed. Is that because it's coming from the outside of them? Are they being affected by the phenomenon, or is there something inherent in the human psyche that is affected by experience with a UFO, or something anomalous like that? There's a real dearth of information and study on that kind of those kind of effects, and I think they're just as important, and in some cases they might even be more important than just like getting the straight physical facts.
Yeah,
that might be a huge part of the puzzle that we haven't been looking at, because that kind of stuff is not valued very highly in science in our society. Is subjective emotional reactions to things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that. You think that's probably just like part and parcel with sort of the UFO researchers who want to, the nuts and bolts aspect of it, and they don't want to get into the spiritual side of it and that whole, internal debate within the UFO scene about nuts and bolts versus the spiritual aspect type of thing, and they want the hard evidence, if you will, stuff that they can show to real scientists' attitude. Yeah,
well, of course they can show that to real scientists, but the real scientists, for the most part, aren't going to care, because all they have is a bunch of data about something that can't be put in a lab, can't be repeated, can't be called up on demand, etc. That's what science deals with, and I think science is as it's configured right now, at least the physical sciences have dealt as much as they can, and have probably gone almost as far as they can in analyzing UFO reports, as opposed to UFO encounters.
Yeah. So we need to take more of a look at the encounter, like you said, than just the sighting.
Right, exactly. I found on somebody's website, and I think it's in one of my books, there's sort of a chart that Jacques Vallée drew up in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of an array of different effects that were felt or seen, etc., during a UFO sighting. And one of them, wait, let me see if I can find it. It's vastly interesting to me. But what it does is include physical effects, lasting effects, psychological and physical, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Things that you don't often see in a UFO report.
Do you think that ufology will turn towards that, or is it going to just take like a whole new generation of researchers to sort of do that? Because it seems like what are we going to call Peter Davenport and have him start asking like additional questions or something like that? It's hard to sort of turn that corner, if you will, on changing the way the researchers do the research. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I think it's going to take new people coming in and concentrating on this for a long period of time before we see any effect of it. Because people that are doing it now, I think they're kind of locked, nothing against them, but they're locked in their ways about how they want to look at the UFO subject and how they think the problem or whatever, the mystery is going to be solved. And, for hundreds and hundreds of years, mysteries have been solved by science.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now science runs up against something that it can't solve with the tools that it has at the moment. So I'm not saying anything against science. I'm saying that maybe, other sciences and other aspects of the human experience must be put into the equation. Here it is. Level 1, sighting. Level 2, physical effects. Level 3, living entities. Level 4, and this is interesting, reality transformation. How did the person feel at the time of the sighting? Did they feel like, everything was as it was during the sighting, after the sighting, weeks, months, years after the sighting? Lasting injury, that's another one. I think it's important, and that's just the beginning there. That BoA came up with in the 60s, I believe.
Yeah.
That's just the beginning of other aspects of encounters that people that do research in this should be looking at. I've never been a ufologist. I haven't gone out and done field research and questioned witnesses and been there right after the sighting or whatever. Although it's funny, I've had people call me and tell me a friend of mine called me about a month ago and said, I'm watching a UFO right now.
Oh, wow.
What? Really? He goes, yeah, it's out over the ocean, and he described it to me.
That's cool.
But the thing was that, he said it looked like the moon in the sky, and then he realized he saw the moon right next to it, so it wasn't the moon. And then somebody pointed out to me later, which was good, I love this, to have this at my fingertips with the net and blogging and all that. He goes, there was no moon out that night. The moon didn't appear that night. And so then I'm left wondering, was this guy screwing around with me, or is there something extremely weird going on there?
That's just strange. That's a weird one.
He swears to me that that's what happened, and he saw these two shapes, and one was the moon and one wasn't, and the one that wasn't the moon just looked like this round orb, and he said it looked like these tentacles or something were closing around it as a shadow. Then it got small, and these lights around it were blinking, and then it flew off over the ocean.
Oh, weird. Why can't I see anything like that?
I don't know. That's the same thing I'm asking. It's funny. I did reports gathered off the internet of these California sightings, all within about 2 weeks of each other, like 4 of them.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were within like a couple of miles of where I was, but not at the time I was there.
Oh, man.
And one was, at 4 a.m. in Burbank, which is over the hill from me here, over the Hollywood Hills. And one was near San Diego at the Marine base at Camp Pendleton, which I had driven by like 2 days before. And one was out near Victorville, where I was out at the dry lake flying. I was out there flying a paraglider. And I left at like about 3 o'clock, and at about 5 o'clock the sighting started, and it went on for about 2 hours.
Oh, man. They're looking for you, dude.
They like to be there after I'm gone.
I guess so, yeah.
Gone? Okay, let's go.
You have a stalker, an intergalactic stalker. And actually, there's a kind of good segue here, because you were talking about the good aspects of the online world of ufology, and this year we did see kind of one of the bad aspects in a way, and that's the sort of viral rage that was the drone photos that sort of lit a little fire in ufology during the summer. I kind of like to think of them as 2007's version of Serpo, because they became wildly popular on the internet, but I don't really know. I didn't really dig too much into it. I kind of poo-pooed them. I like to give these kind of stories the time to percolate, and usually if they're any good, they'll last. And I don't know too much more about the drone stories, but I'm sure you saw at least the emergence of the drone story in 2007, the drone photo story. What did you think of that whole thing? You know, what's funny is I thought it was more of the, you said it was like Serpo. I thought it was brought to you by the same people or some of the same people that were involved with Serpo. Really? I had that feeling just because of what it was and the way it was presented. You see, when Serpo happened, there was, the internet was not, oh, no, what am I saying? Serpo happened, I think, when people that were perpetrating it were aware of how they could use the internet. Yeah. Because
before that, they had to find people and kind of, maybe like Victor Martinez, and shoot information out through those people. And then somebody realized, I don't know why it took them so long, why don't we just do our own thing on the internet and do it that way? What I'm talking about is people in intelligence and counterintelligence doing things to mess with people for a different purpose, for which I do not know what that purpose is. But I'm pretty sure that it was a government concocted hoax.
The drone photos, you mean?
Drone photos, I'm not as sure, but I've got a sneaking hunch.
Really? But yeah, it's weird to wonder why they would do something like that in the first place, unless it's like a psychological experiment to see how stories spread or something like that in a small community type of thing.
Well, I think it's something to do with passing messages, like right out in the open.
What do you mean?
Let's say I wanted to pass a message to somebody.
Yeah.
And then somebody announces that there's going to be this brand new giant pretty statue in the middle of the park. And there's going to be inscription on the bottom of it. Everybody goes and looks at the inscription, and everybody says, oh, that's very nice. And 2 or 3 people who know what they're looking for go and look at part of the inscription and get the piece of information that they need to off of that inscription.
Weird. And you think that's what, there was like a message in the drone photo for certain people, but you and I aren't privy to what the message was?
I think that's what Serpo was, and the drone thing, since it had so many elements to it, that I think there might have been a message in there somewhere.
That's bizarre.
Maybe in the writing, maybe in the timing of the pictures, maybe what the pictures showed. I don't know. I mean, I may be totally out on a limb and a complete idiot here, but to me it had the same earmarks of kind of the Serpo thing, because it was totally weird, completely insane, completely unsupported. There's no way to check up on it, really, and everybody that it was involved with it was anonymous.
Yeah.
In fact, the person that came out with it said that, was first called, no, he was called Chad, that's right.
And it took off kind of like wildfire on the online world.
Yeah, and it took off like wildfire for a while. Now, if some private person was doing it, cheers to them. Good job.
Yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with, somebody said it was a viral marketing campaign for Halo or whatever the name of that. What's that? What's the video game?
Yeah. I think that was the guy who writes for my website. That was his theory on the whole thing.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually played that video game with somebody. I don't play video games because I think they're a waste of time to me. But I started playing it with this friend of mine who was sick, so I was just hanging out with him playing the video game, and I was looking around for all that alien writing. I didn't see any of it.
I don't know. I don't play video games either, so I'll have to ask him.
I didn't play the whole game. I don't know. But if some of that stuff was supposed to be featured prominently in that game, I didn't see it. And I played it for like 2 hours with this guy. Yeah,
he posted a little follow-up to it, actually. I haven't posted it on the website, but it'll be up there today. He does mention that, and I think he provides a link to something with the alien aspects to Halo. So I don't know. I'll forward you the URL for that.
There was a guy in England that produced that really cool little music video, and he took all of the graphics and the pictures and all that, and made kind of this fake little short film about it, which was great. It was fun. I can't remember the name of the guy. Wait. And the funny thing was, after I posted about it, the person that actually did it came on the list and said, thanks for giving me the kudos for it, and it was fun to make it.
Well, that's cool. Just to sort of like jump back to the message theory, who would you think the messages will be between? The government and people in ufology, or completely outside people outside of ufology?
Completely outside of people ufology, but it picks up people in ufology and people that are, if it got to the point where I'm thinking of it or I have this suspicion, obviously people that outside of this country or terrorists or whatever, different governments, are going to have that suspicion too, so they're going to start hanging around it. You know what? I may have this tunnel vision because of the Benowitz thing and that disinformation campaign. But the purpose of a lot of this disinformation is at least in this case with Serpo, and the other thing is one, to present some information that's being passed between people, and two, which is a classic disinformation thing, is to pull people out of their holes who might be hiding there, like putting out a sugar and see which flies come to it, or turning on a light and see which moths come to it, or whatever.
Yeah.
So if that's not there, those people are going to stay in the woodwork. And with the internet, you can track who's interested in things. You know, what people were using, what search parameters, especially early on, because after a few days, it just went. It's a huge mess.
Yeah. So, like, maybe as an example, it would be like, if the terrorists are trying to figure out how to, combat the drones or something that the U.S. government flies over the Middle East, if they were interested in the drone story, the drone UFO story, all of a sudden then the government can kind of track those people down and get on them type of thing. Is that kind of the right idea?
It used to be who was coming out to Area 51 to take pictures, or, who was going over by the military base to ask people questions about UFO sightings that didn't happen to be anybody anyone knew about.
Yeah. Now it's like who's trying to find out more about the drone planes. Yeah.
Like I said, I could be completely way out of line, totally off in left field here.
Well,
these little scenarios I run through my head, I play with them, and I sit on them for a while, look at information, talk to people, and see if they bear any fruit. I don't know if it will. There's people who have gone a lot further with the Serpo thing than I ever wanted to, because as soon as I got into it, I realized there's a lot of emotion and what's the word, territorialism and things like that associated with, and strongly held opinions associated with looking at this stuff. And I just didn't want to get into it because I got some wicked, nasty emails from people just because of talking about Serpo. And I put up a little picture right after I did one of my Serpo things, and I had a picture of the Brer Fox and the Tar Baby. As soon as I stuck my hand in it, it stuck on me and it wouldn't let go, and it was very unpleasant. So I just don't want to. I'd rather sit in the background and watch and talk to people quietly rather than make pronouncements.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, I could be totally wrong. I don't think I am. I think part of what I'm thinking and what I've heard from different people is right and makes sense. And, just what I told you about passing messages and that's like kind of the scratching the bare surface of it. But, publicly, I don't want to get into a lot of the stuff that I talk about on that angle with certain people, because it's too charged politically, for people politically, not like global politics or anything. And there's a lot of emotion and strongly held beliefs around it, and it's just too much noise for me to deal with. And so I think a lot of work is done by people who kind of quietly sit in the background, and then at some point when everything makes sense and everything falls into place and you have a good argument and people that are willing to talk, then you say something about it. I think that's what this information people count on too, is for people as soon as they get information to spit it straight out into the public.
Yeah. And if you get mixed up in the whole debate and everything, that's kind of, you're just going along with kind of what they want anyway. So it's better to sort of let it play out in the first place. Yeah,
and it's just I get the feeling. I used to get a lot of this information from different people, like people that said they were privy to certain information, and I don't anymore. And I think it's because, one, I probably said a couple of things I shouldn't have, which is part of the reason of shutting up. And the other reason is I'm really careful about I try to be really careful about what I say publicly. When I'm not, it's made very clear to me very quickly from a lot of different quarters that I shouldn't have said what I said. And it's happened a couple of times in my life, and it's been kind of upsetting.
Oh, boy.
One was way back when I was doing Excluded Middle magazine. I published something, and the person that gave it to me said that his unit or people or whoever said that I didn't present it the way they wanted to, and they didn't want to tell me anything anymore.
Oh, man, that sucks.
Yeah, but the thing was, about 3 or 4 months later, they were doing the same thing again. But after that, I didn't release anything that they told me anymore, and they lost interest.
Weird. So it's like a weird dance.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
Strange.
And they're leading. If you try to lead, they drop you. Hey, you're stepping on my feet. Get away from me.
Yeah. Weird.
I'm just not really involved in that anymore. It's just basically, friends and people I've known for a long time, and occasionally somebody will get in touch with me and, say, oh, I read so-and-so. And then somebody will come on the blog sometime and start saying things I know he's not supposed to know, or he or she or whoever it is.
Yeah.
And they'll kind of put out feelers and talk to me a little bit, and then they'll drop it, and then I never hear from them again.
That's strange.
Happened a couple of times, and one of the guys' names on UFO Mystic, which I thought was a great name for somebody who might be doing this, was Whisper Stream. That's a screen name.
Now, what would you say the attitude was of the people in ufology? Obviously, there was a huge debate over Serpo. Did the drone photo? I noticed that it got a lot of play in the UFO scene, and I'm sure there was a lot of debate about it. But what would you say a lot of the big names and normal people sort of try to just keep it at arm's length, if you will, while it settled down, or what was the attitude in the UFO field about the drones photos?
I think most people that believed themselves to be serious about it almost completely ignored it because it was so outrageous and it was there was no way to prove it.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's like a fun carnival ride, but it doesn't get any work done.
Exactly. Yeah.
You need fun carnival rides, which is why I talked about it on the site. Because it's fun and it's an aspect of the UFO experience and how we react to it, even if it was based on completely nothing, as I think it was. Although, what's very funny is somebody made a comment on one of the posts, I think. He said, now that Whitley Strieber has come out and kind of supported this drone thing and saying he saw one, he said, just wait, people are going to start seeing them in other different places now.
Yeah.
And it might take on a life of its own just because that meme has been injected into the culture, into the conversation, into our ideas of what we should be seeing in the sky, no matter how insane it is. I thought that was a great idea, and I wonder if that's going to happen.
When did Whitley Strieber say that? Like recently?
Yeah, I read something on his site. He said I think in early December 7th, actually, Pearl Harbor Day. He said he woke up in the middle of the night and he saw one of the drone things hanging out right outside his window in Santa Monica over the ocean.
Yikes.
And being Whitley Strieber, I believe him, but I also believe that he's gotten to the point where whatever the phenomenon is or whatever it's doing to him is almost indistinguishable from, something that everybody else would call a dream or something like that. Not to say that it's not real. There is something real going on with Strieber, and there has been for a long time, something coming from outside his consciousness. But he's such a high-profile character, and he's such a creative person, and, it may sound like I'm trying to say he's delusional, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and we shouldn't believe him. That's not what I'm saying at all. Given what I said about subjective reactions and emotional reactions and all that to UFO sightings, I think that for better or worse, he's kind of like the bellwether of what might be coming, occasionally in our interaction with whatever it is that's out there. It's funny, some people think that I don't believe in any UFOs, and I think it's ridiculous, and I'm a big skeptic. It's like, that couldn't be further from the truth. I think that there's something that's extra human, not us, that affects us every once in a while, and we can't get a good handle on it. And things like Serpo and like the drone thing, the carrot phenomenon as it's called, whatever you want to call it, that comes in out of left field, probably made up, but then shapes our collective idea about what UFOs should be, at least in one aspect. Does that make any sense?
I think so, yeah. I think so. Now, based on what we've seen now with Serpo and the drone thing, should we expect more of these types of wildfire stories, in the years to come? I presume so.
Yeah, of course. And, I can't wait to see what's come up with next.
Yeah,
I'd like to see a drone hovering over over O'Hare Airport. That would be hilarious.
Could you even venture to guess what we'll see next? I mean, nobody really could have predicted the the Serpo and then the drone thing, so it's probably hard to even imagine. But I mean, can you even venture a guess what might be the next big thing?
You know what? As soon as you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is the first scene in one of Strieber's books, where everybody in that one town heard the 9 knocks on the side of their houses at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Just some like massive but totally contained thing that hits the news, because I hadn't heard of it till I read about it in Strieber's book, but there were news reports about it.
Weird. So that's what you think might be, just off the top of your head. Interesting. Like a psychic premonition almost.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I flashed on as soon as you asked that.
All right.
If there's something else trying to communicate with us, I was having this argument with somebody at work. He goes, well, until they land on the White House lawn. And I said, I don't think it happened that way. I think it's going to be from the bottom up instead of the top down.
Yeah, like just a mass UFO type sighting where they'll appear over like all the cities or something crazy like that?
No. Something ridiculously subtle, like, you know, seeding a few different few hundred or thousand people here and there with strange ideas that kind of bubble up from the subconscious, and people are not quite totally aware of, but they know that there's something there. You know what I mean?
Vaguely. What was it, like turn into like a phenomenon, a national type phenomenon, or just I don't know, I'm a little confused by what you're saying. Well,
I'm confused about what I'm saying too. Because if I was coming from another planet or dimension, or somebody that wasn't human, or this planet, whatever, I got to the point where I had to admit I was here because there was no way around it. Because if you had if whatever it is had a choice, then, you know, it's either going to say, yes, let's deal with these people, or no, forget it. Obviously, it's yes, let's deal with these people.
Yeah.
Because it keeps showing up. You know, but the time schedule for this consciousness and us and our way of looking at things and doing things there's such a wide gulf between it. You know, how do we go about doing that? You know, just saying, oh, we're here, you know, that's going to make everybody go, whoa. It's not going to be good for either side.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's another way to do this? And this is, you know, I think I'm getting this directly from Strieber, is go to a few hundred people or a few thousand people or a couple million people and start nudging them in a way that they have to admit that there's something else there. There's something coming from outside the human experience that has to be noticed and has to be dealt with. It's, you know, kind of like an animal kind of, you know, checking you out and maybe coming up and taking something out of your hand and then backing off a little bit, and, you know, doing it in a very careful and subtle way, but, you know, doing it like an animal, but in an infinitely more intelligent way and subtle way and subconscious way even.
Yeah.
I know I sound very vague, but it's one of those things where I can't presume to describe how something that isn't human thinks. So, you know, I got to use our metaphors and our words and our language to try and describe that.
Exactly, yeah. But when they interact with these people, then it would sort of like start something in them where they would, you know, reach like some kind of critical mass, if you will. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like it would start with a few people, and then it would help to grease the wheels of acceptance?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. To the point where, you know, plant that seed until we're at the point where, and maybe push us along a little bit till we're at the point where we can see reality in a different way.
Yeah.
And I hate using the word reality, and every time I use it, I put it in quotes practically.
Yeah, but it's got to be like a slow evolution and not just them land on the White House lawn, because they probably know as well as we do that would be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, do you think there's something else besides humans here that are affecting us?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Then we're talking on the same page here.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to say there's people coming from other planets and people being abducted and taken away for genetic experiments and all that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I doubt it. I don't know if I believe it.
Yeah.
What I'm pretty certain of is there's something that's not human that's been affecting us for thousands and thousands of years.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't try to get married to one theory or anything like that, because as soon as you get into one thing, you find some other news that you have to try and fit into your
right, exactly
thing, and it becomes a nightmare. And it's better just to sit back, look at all the stuff, and try and figure out exactly what's going on, but realize that at the base of it, you're not going to figure it out because you're like the millionth person to look at it. So,
yeah, exactly. It's there for everybody to interpret in the way that they want to, and I think that if there is something else trying to communicate with us, that's what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has any connection to, seeing flying saucers in the sky. Probably it does. That may just be a little signpost in the overall campaign. And like I said, the time frame for them might be completely different for us. We think we got to get something done in this amount of time, in 2 weeks or 5 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. But to them, it's like, well, whenever.
Yeah.
We got time. We don't care. We're going to do it the way we want. If there is even a collective, understanding about what's going on, they may be all completely, totally independent agents. I don't know.
Yeah. It's really it's hard to wrap your mind around it. To try and pin down some kind of like rationale or motivation behind what is going on is probably not going to work because there's many different motivations probably behind all the different stuff that seems to be happening.
Yeah, and there's many different theories about that. I keep saying, there's this other thing, maybe it's part of our subconscious. Maybe we think it's part of our subconscious, and just by the nature of what we think is reality, it's not that. It's, our subconscious is everything, or whatever we connect to down there. I don't know. Maybe it's aliens coming from other planets. Could be.
Yeah.
But, my nature, by my nature, is if an entire crowd is looking at something and saying this is what it is, I immediately run off in the other direction because I want to see what everybody else is missing, whether it has validity or not.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it does, and even if it doesn't, it's often interesting and fun.
Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, more than 30 people in Stephenville, Texas, say they saw a UFO. You believe him?
Tony Kornheiser, believe him. Who do you think was up there getting probed?
I'm going to presume...
Do you know how many times I've gone through alien probes in my life?
Well, how'd you get back here so quickly?
Teleportation.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
This is why we play the game.
To sort of jump into the next big, talking point, if you will, in the calendar year of 07, as far as UFO stories that broke through, and that's this Kucinich. I may have got the chronology of these two wrong, but I'll start with the Kucinich story. And just that the story came out, I think Shirley MacLaine wrote a book or something that said she was friends with Kucinich and he saw a UFO, and all of a sudden it became quite a big story. And they even asked him about it during the presidential debate. And many people in the more exopolitical realm of ufology who really want this UFO story to be treated as a national issue and want it to be discussed were, wetting themselves with excitement when the three letters UFO were used during a presidential debate. Mm-hmm. It became a huge story in and of itself. Kind of really, Kucinich wasn't taken very seriously as a candidate in the first place, and this was kind of the death knell for him as a candidate because he became pinned with that UFO tag for, I would probably say, for the rest of his political career. I don't think he'll ever get over the UFO tag. And so we kind of learned a lot about the way politics and the media really feel about the UFO phenomenon as far as treating it as a national issue. I guess just talk about that. I mean, we don't have to actually talk about Kucinich seeing a UFO because, much like the Simon King thing, that's irregardless. The real thing that I thought was interesting was the way it was looked at by the media.
Yeah, you know what? As you were saying that, I was thinking, you know what? I wonder who inserted that question and decided to bring that up and put that into the debate.
Yeah.
A Republican or another candidate, perhaps? Well, the reason, they don't take it seriously because nobody knows what it is. And if you don't know what something is, you got to put it in the I don't know box. And the I don't know box doesn't fit real well in politics.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure. The other thing is, I think there's a lot more important things going on than where do UFOs come from and who's seen them.
Yeah.
And everybody realizes that. Whatever you think about the political process in this country or, if it's been compromised or whatever, UFOs are like down the list, in the list of 500, it's down at, 499 or 500.
Yeah, it's like boxers or briefs.
Yeah.
I kind of interpreted this in some ways as a bad situation in a way for the exopolitical movement, or, the UFO disclosure, getting it into the political aspect thing, because, they've been really pushing for discussion of the UFO subject by presidential candidates and political candidates. And when they finally got it, they really got a slap in the face, kind of, if you will, as far as like how it was going to be treated.
Well, right, exactly. I don't know what their exact plan is, but unless you have somebody that has a really, really strong profile, kind of a bulletproof political career, and is a strong leader and speaks well and popularly on all other subjects, I don't think you can assert UFOs into debate until after the person's in office. I think that's when they should be bothering the person. Make sure, quietly ask them if they're interested in the UFO subject, if they have any experience with it, and then that personal interest has to carry them into political office, not as part of a campaign, but as part of something that they want to take care of when they get elected.
Yeah,
I don't know how to do that, but it would seem that that's the way to get somebody interested in it, because by and large, the press, who determine what's important, don't care about the UFO thing if it's mixed with politics. In fact, like we've said, they really tend to downplay it and laugh at it. Getting over that hump is insurmountable. It's more like people that are already in office that are interested in it, like Jimmy Carter was and Reagan was. And I can't think of anybody since then, any president since then, who's really had the UFO thing as part of their anything that they're really interested in finding out about.
Yeah, so you
to the bottom of, when Clinton got in office, he said he was going to get he wanted to get the Kennedy files released, or wanted to see them, and as far as I know, he never saw them. They wouldn't even show them to him, the JFK file.
Yeah. So
ones that are sealed till 2025 or whatever it is.
Yeah, something crazy like that. So you're saying it's more advantageous to sort of like let the UFO phenomenon kind of come to them instead of trying to force the issue onto the politicians.
Yeah, at least at this point, because, until people think it's important, I don't think politicians are going to think it's important. It has to be a personal interest of theirs.
Yeah, it did kind of show the other side of the coin in a way, because like we were saying, in the O'Hare story in January, it was treated pretty seriously, but then coming around to November with the Kucinich UFO story, then it was the other side of the coin, where it was really, the giggle curtain was really in full effect. I guess the lasting effect I had from the whole Kucinich UFO story and how they kind of brought the issue to other candidates and stuff was once I saw how poorly it was treated by the media, then I was kind of like, oh, wait a minute now, this isn't going to be as easy as they've been saying it was, or, this is going to take a lot longer than it seemed. Mm-hmm. So who knows, but maybe in the 2012 election, now we kind of got the UFO issue out there, and maybe we can get it further in 2012. Who knows?
Yeah, UFOs and the paranormal and things like that are going to be important to a lot of people when the UFOs and whatever it is decides it's supposed to be important.
Yeah, and when it has some kind of effect on people that beyond just a passing interest, do you know what I mean? More than a thought question, when it has some kind of effect where,
Yeah, when everybody's affected in some way.
Yeah, when they're
Which is why I said that's I think the phenomenon is going to decide when that happens, not us.
Yeah. And then the other big event, pretty much to close out the year, was the November disclosure press conferences, one press conference, and sort of a media blitz, really, in November for disclosure, witnesses, government witnesses coming out, that kind of thing. It was sort of a rehash of the 2001 maybe, or 2000, I forget the year, but Stephen Greer wasn't involved with this one. It was from a different group. This sort of November disclosure push that happened all of a sudden. I guess just what was your take on that whole series of events? And let's start with that, just what your take was on all that.
Well, because of my opinion about exopolitics and all that, I didn't follow it that much because I didn't think it would make that much of a difference, and not many people would care. The thing was that these people keep trying to get UFOs out into a public debate, which is great. And I wish it was more in the public debate. And like I said, it's an uphill battle, and that's not a battle I want to deal with. The only one I remember, I think there was one at the National Press Club that was hosted or moderated by Symington.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
And then it seemed like that turned into a little bit of a media blitz, but then...
Yeah, and then there was very soon after that, there was something on Larry King's show with a few different people, including Stan Friedman and a couple other people. Who was the astronaut that was on there that rambled on?
I want to say Buzz Aldrin.
Was it Aldrin or Cooper?
I believe it was Buzz Aldrin. I know he was on in July and was rambling and had a little model and stuff and was showing it off and just like kept trying to explain it, and Larry just kept trying to speed him up. So that might be what you're thinking of.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry I didn't pay more attention to it, and it made a little blip on my screen, and everybody I know, no blip at all.
Really?
Yeah, well, not UFO people, but just friends of mine, and people I work with, and my flying buddies and stuff. Most of them didn't even hear about it.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was really pumped up a lot, it seemed, in ufology, but in the end, as is the case with just about every story we've talked about here this year that went by in the UFO scene, nothing had that staying power that we really sort of need, and nothing really latched on and had, more of a role to it. Yeah,
but, if, like I said, it would have to be something where something very strange happened to a lot of people over a period of time. And that somebody was paying attention to in a large media outlet. That, or there could be a big book written about it or something. Because, when Communion came out, that was like a bomb being dropped.
So you think maybe another flap type situation, kind of like what happened in the 60s and 70s type of thing?
Yeah, maybe like a flap, or a flap where people there's some sort of lasting effect, or somebody says they're going to be back on this day and it comes back on that day.
Yeah.
I don't think has ever happened. It may have happened once or twice. The last time I think it happened was at Fatima in Portugal, but where the thing did come back when it said it would.
Yeah, that's pretty much the big events of the year, and then we kind of talked about that. One of the big trends, I guess you could say, in the year that I sort of noticed that was really started coming around a lot at the beginning of this year was this kind of explosion in paranormal TV. Seemed like there's been a lot more paranormal shows, and there's even more coming up on the horizon. Are you sensing that as well, that there is, maybe with the writer's strike or something else, I'm not sure, but there seems to be a little bit more interest in the paranormal all of a sudden. It's kind of coming around again. Well,
not because of the writer's strike, because they need writers for these shows. But, I noticed that, but I also noticed that it's more like ghost stuff.
Yeah.
There is that UFO Hunter show coming out with William Burns and a few other people, but that's the only one I really know about. But yeah, most of them are paranormal shows, like you said, ghost hunter shows, haunting shows, things like that. They goes through stages, not stages, but fads, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think we just had a ghost hunter guy on last night, and pretty much we were just talking about how the ghost hunting thing is definitely a huge fad right now. And that kind of ties into sort of what I noticed as the trends in the esoteric world for 07, just based on the stuff that I had seen and having my ear to the ground. It seemed like the 9/11 thing starting to die down a little bit. Ghost hunting definitely picking up a lot. UFOs, even though they sort of broke into the mainstream, I still kind of felt like it was a little bit of a down year in a sense that it was more of the same. And I felt like cryptozoology is kind of a little bit on the rise. Might be seeing more of that, especially
definitely
with the Monster Hunters show and a little bit more mainstream acceptance of cryptozoology. I guess just sort of react to those trends, if you will, if you think those are pretty accurate depiction of what's going on in the fields.
Yeah, I think UFOs got a nice boost at the beginning of the year, like we said with the O'Hare thing, and kind of held steady through the year. I don't think there was a downturn in UFO interest, especially with the stuff coming out in the debates and politicking and things like that. The ghost hunting stuff, quite a bit up. I have no explanation for that except for that it's not been, people haven't paid as much attention to it. Of course, there's, psychic shows like John Edward and all that are always popular. They've been popular forever.
Yeah.
Magazines, all that. And the cryptozoology thing, that kind of surprised me that it is getting so much play right now. And I think the reason that people are more interested in cryptozoology than in other paranormal type things. Is cryptozoology on its face isn't really a paranormal pursuit.
Yeah.
It's a pursuit of animals that haven't been discovered yet or aren't accepted as being discovered yet. And that can range anywhere from, that place in Sumatra, whatever they found, that Garden of Eden place with 8,000 different new species nobody had ever seen before, which is quite exciting. That's a cryptozoology, as it turns from not known to known is kind of a cryptozoological phenomenon. And then there's the classic ones like, Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and lake monsters, and then, one-offs here and there. There's other things like, phantom kangaroos and black cats and all that. These are animals that are known about, and so they're easy to get a handle on. Yeah, there's black cats running around. There's panthers. What they're doing in the middle of England or, in a backyard in Ohio, we do not know, but people saw them. That's an interesting thing. It could have happened, I guess. It's coming from a place that's not so, out there as aliens or whatever, because you're never going to see an alien in a zoo.
Yeah, exactly.
But you might see Bigfoot in a zoo. I have serious doubts as to whether anyone will ever capture a Bigfoot, because I don't think it's an actual physical being all the time. That's my opinion right now. But yeah, I think people are interested in it, and people with a science background. I notice that cryptozoology pops up a lot on Boing Boing.
Yeah, you were pointing that out on the on UFO Mystic that UFOs aren't cool, but cryptozoology is, and that definitely seems to be the trend.
I wasn't jealous of the cryptozoology and Lauren Coleman, who the guy's a giant in the world of anomalies. But what it was what I was pointing out was people that with a science background and the kind of people that look at that site, the cyberpunk kind of people that tend to think of themselves as, hip and cool and all that on top of a lot of trends. This appeals to them because it sort of tweaks the nose of science, but not that much. Mm-hmm. When you talk about alien stuff like that, it basically is, slapping science in the face. And that's not as comfortable for people. Although I did, what's funny, I did talk to, or emailed with Mark Pilkington, and he said that he had dinner with one of the people that writes for, Boing Boing, and he said he gave him a stack of UFO books.
Well, that's good.
Look for maybe some more UFO posts on Boing. And you know what? I have noticed them more recently. They had one about the Texas sightings that came up a couple of days ago. That was posted on Boing Boing.
Yeah, see, that's what we got to do.
I don't think it would have been on there last year.
Yeah, we need more of a grassroots thing going on, because that's the kind of thing that'll help.
I got to, I think I personally should write to the guy and introduce myself and say, hey, take a look at the site. This isn't the ufology that you think of when think of some fat pimply guy with glasses living at his parents' place collecting clippings. It's a little bit different than a lot of people think. If you take the time to take a look at it, and brings up philosophical questions and questions about the philosophy of science and how it might change to adapt to studying things like this.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of, we've been talking about on the show with guys like you and Mac Tonys and stuff and Nick Redfern that the UFO field's changing, and maybe it's time to re-educate the rest of the people as to what this field's really all about, because it's not what they may have thought it was in the 80s and 90s and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the loudest segment of any subculture tends to be the one that does the least thinking about, or, is the most entrenched. I don't know if they do the least thinking. And that's what is presented to the world. Like, you think that, there's people, people are going to get mad at me now, but there's people in PsyCop who are actual, real skeptics that want to get to the bottom of things. But the loudest ones are the ones that have a fundamentalist belief in in the agenda that they're trying to push.
Yeah.
And that's what people think of as that organization.
Yep. And it's the same way with the UFO.
Yeah, the loudest people in ufology, the people, I'm not saying loud like, a bunch of boors standing around yelling.
Zealots.
The people that get the most airtime, the people that are good at it, the people that are good at the media thing, are the ones that are pushing the extraterrestrial thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in ufology are tired of the extraterrestrial hypothesis. They accept it as a possible explanation. I do.
Yeah.
But it's a possible explanation and only one of quite a few. And most people aren't aware of the others because they're not amenable to sound bites.
Exactly.
I wish I could put the, Mac is going to be able to put the crypto-terrestrial thing into a few sound bites. He's going to have to when the book comes out and he starts getting interviewed. And at that point, that'll be a little turning point, I think. I got a lot of big hopes for that book. I wish I'd written it. It's one of those things where you've got a few ideas and you think, oh, this would be nice and this is interesting, but Mac has actually taken those ideas, run with them, thought about them a lot more, done the research, and he's done a book, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I was really intrigued when we had him on the show to talk about it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has when he has it all together in one thing. It should be really cool.
Yeah.
Now, this is kind of outside of your realm, but one of the trends that I mentioned here that I thought I noticed this year was that the 9/11 thing really had kind of died down after it sort of peaked out last year. Did you get that impression at all? Probably maybe don't even really follow that sort of news, but I don't know.
I sort of follow it, yeah.
Did you get that impression, or do you think that it's still going strong? Or it felt, to me personally, it felt like it was peaking, and then last year for the in 2006 for like the big 5th year anniversary, then it's kind of gone downhill since then with aside from this new weird trend of like public rowdiness of 9/11, don't tase me, bro, and people disrupting events. Seems like there's been a disrupting trend that's come up in the 9/11 thing. But overall, I felt like the buzz about it was definitely down in 2007. What do you think?
I agree with you. I also think that, it's going to get immediate huge shot in the arm the next time there's a terrorist attack in the United States.
Yeah. So this is going to be like a whole field that it's not going anywhere as a field. I mean, it's like the new JFK thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where, most people, I think, a lot of people accept that there's a big question mark there. At least there's some doubt. Just like the JFK thing.
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person that's going to, I have incredibly huge, suspicions about any kind of power. I don't like centralization of it. I don't like cover-up of it. I don't like non-accountability of it. And that all plays into the 9/11 thing, which makes me have serious doubts about the official story. I don't have a deeply held belief in any direction. I just have serious doubts, maybe more than other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the 9/11 Truth Movement did, was plant that seed of doubt in people's minds. And I think that's a good thing. Doubt is a great thing, It's nice to nail somebody to the floor and say, look at what you did, and have it, incontrovertible evidence. But that doesn't happen very often. But having the doubt there is a good thing. I mean, that's part of why we still live in this country and have elections and all that, and hopefully have some democracy still going on.
Yeah.
If it's got to be expressed as doubt about something as horrible as 9/11, then that's good. I mean, that's a good thing. So I'm glad those people are around. I'm glad they did what they did and are doing what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating sort of like field to watch, because it's very rare that you get to see like the birth of a movement in a way, or sort of like the birth of a whole new realm of the paranormal world, because conspiracy is kind of in the paranormal world. So it's kind of interesting to watch this thing as it grows and changes over the next 5-10 years, and where it's going to go next. And
why it's called parapolitics by a lot of people in that movement. Has been for a few years. Ken Thomas and Rob Sterling, people like that, other friends of mine, they've pushed for the term parapolitics rather than conspiracy because of the bad connotations of the word conspiracy theory.
Absolutely, yeah. Like the people who don't want to say UFO anymore and change it to something else.
I don't have any problem with the UFO. You know what? It's funny. I've got all kinds of problems with people trying to change language around to make them either feel better or to soften the blow of something. But then I don't have any problem when something becomes a little bit more descriptive. Like instead of saying skeptics or debunkers, I say fundamentalist skeptics, because that to me is because a skeptic is fine. I don't mind a skeptic. What I don't like is somebody who has their mind made up, which is a fundamentalist mindset, which is why I say fundamentalist skeptic. You'll notice that on UFO Mystic. Every time I'm talking about skeptics, I say skeptics. Every time I'm talking about somebody that's had their mind made up and won't have it changed and doesn't look at the evidence, that's a fundamentalist skeptic.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess just to wrap up the 2007 year in review, would you say good year or bad year for ufology? Like we said, it kind of broke into the mainstream a little bit more here in 2007 and held steady, as you pointed out. So would you say good year or bad year, or it's going to take a while before we really look back and know?
You know what? Holding steady is always good, especially with the UFO thing, because that goes up and down and up and down. Holding steady is, good for a financial report, even, and especially good for ufology. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good in the sense that it held steady at the point where it broke through in January. You know what I mean? Where it got some mainstream play, and then over the course of the year, a good UFO story or a big UFO story would get more mainstream play. So it held steady at the point where at least they talked about it, which is a change for the better. So yeah, I guess it would be a good year for ufology.
Yeah, and the disclosure from France, and the release of files from France and from England coming up here. That might be a tiny little push here at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens in 2008. Do you have any ideas what we may see, or it's always a mixed bag, and you never know what's going to come up around the horizon?
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen. I hope it continues to interest people. Like I said, if there's any kind of giant political thing like another terrorist attack, ufology, everything else in the toilet for another 5 years again.
Yeah, exactly. So
because that's not going to be very important. It's much more important to find out if our own lives are going to be threatened. That's a lot more important than making stupid talk about UFOs.
Yeah. And
UFOs aren't killing anybody. They don't have an agenda.
Yeah, so, terrorist attack, or if the war gets worse or spreads to another country or something like that.
You'll see UFOs go completely off the map for a while again.
Yeah.
It took it like 5 or 6 years to come back after 2001.
Yeah, I'd say 2007 might have been the comeback year for ufology as far as the mainstream goes post 9/11. Is that a fair estimate?
Yeah, I mean, if the interest that was on in ufology before, at least in the public mind, is probably back to at least where it was before that. Maybe a little bit more, but that's the benefit of hindsight. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Now I just got a couple other little points I want to talk to you about, and the one big thing I want to ask you about is sort of breaks the fourth wall in a way. This is your post on Long John Nebel from UFO Mystic, because I was completely fascinated by this piece. I'm a huge fan.
You were.
What's that? Well, you were kind enough to include me actually at the end, which I really appreciate, and
with a link.
I know, with a hard link, which I really like, because then they can go right to my site, which I love. But I was really touched that you included me in there. I really appreciate that. And as a fan of UFO history and UFO media and UFO media history, it was just fascinating. I guess talk a little bit about who Long John Nebel was for people who don't know anything about him. We'll include a hard link to this article because it was fantastic. Talk a little bit about Long John Nebel and his role in shaping paranormal media.
Sure. As far as I know, I can't remember his actual real name. It was something, I think he had like a Jewish name, but he changed it to Long John because he was like 6'8" or something. He was this big, tall guy.
Yeah.
The story of Long John is really interesting, and it seems like he was, destined to kind of be the person that had the first real, actual, all-night paranormal radio show ever that I know of, at least in the United States. Because he was born in Chicago, I think in 1917 or something like that. And he left home in the 8th grade to join the circus.
Oh, wow.
He asked his father, he said, I filled in for a clown today, and they let me, there was a clown that was sick, and he wanted to be a clown in the circus. So they let him do it, at least according to his account. And he said after that, it's showbiz and kind of or more appropriately, kind of the carnival man's patter, selling things. He was really into selling, so he became later he became a salesman. after traveling with the circus for a while, for about a year, I guess, when he was in 8th grade. He moved to New Jersey, I think, in the early 50s, and he started an auction house called Long John's Auctions. And then, he's up there selling stuff every day. It was just along the side of the highway in New Jersey. And the way he got into radio was that he used to buy radio time on New York stations for his auction house. And one of the radio people, one of the producers, I think it was from WOR radio station,
yep,
came out to one of his auctions one time and watched him up there selling stuff and said, God, this guy's a great personality. And he talked to him a little bit and found out he did have an interest in doing a radio show about weird people, basically, not really about the paranormal specifically, but just about the occult and even conspiracy, as it was called at that. It wasn't. I don't know what it was called at that time. Conspiracy theories. And they put him on the radio, and within a few months, it became the most popular show on the station because they put him in the crappy time slot from like 11 at night to 5 in the morning.
Yep.
And it soon became the highest rated show on the station. And in 1962, he was lured away by a $100,000 a year offer from a rival radio station off of WOR. And then he continued at that station for a while, and he ended his career in 1977. About 3 months before he died, he actually finally retired. Larry King took over his slot.
Yeah, and then Larry King slot eventually kind of melded. Larry King left, and then that just turned into Coast to Coast kind of for that time slot.
I guess so. I don't know when Coast to Coast first came on. I thought it was in the early 90s.
Yeah, my impression was that when Larry King left late night, then sort of after a brief period, I don't know if anyone really sort of filled the void as who was the late night king, if you will, of radio, but then Coast to Coast kind of slipped into the thing with Art Bell.
Yeah, but Neville had people, these classic UFO stories and personalities and all that we only, read about and hear about. If you can find recordings, I've got recordings of probably about, 20 or 30 of his shows. And there's people on there like Gray Barker. Jim Mosley was on as a panelist. He'd have this group of people called a panel. And the show was actually called The Party Line because he'd have 4 or 5 people there and 2 or 3 people on the phone talking. Yeah.
Like you said, it wasn't necessarily like a paranormal bent, but it was open to those kind of ideas and stuff and had those kind of guests on, right?
Right. I mean, he'd have a fortune teller, whatever, a psychic on. And then the next night he'd have, Orfeo Angelucci on. Or George Adamski or something like that. He had these people on multiple times, or Gray Barker, or Al Bender, or something like that. All these classical figures from ufology, or somebody from the military talking about their viewpoint of the UFO subject. Or they'd have a ghost hunter on, and they'd talk about ghosts for that night. Another one of the panelists that was on there for a long time, believe it or not, was James Randi.
Oh wow!
When he was simply a magician and not the podium pounding skeptic that we know from later. I mean, excuse me, podium-pounding fundamentalist skeptic that we know from later.
There you go. Now, what about this story here with Jackie Gleason? He was buddies with Long John Neville, and you hear a lot about Jackie Gleason and the Nixon UFO story, but I had never heard this other story that you shared in the article with regards to Neville's radio show.
Well, Gleason, as everybody knows, was heavily interested in the UFO subject. But the thing was, he was deathly serious about it. I want the facts and that's it. I don't want any bullshit on about UFOs. So if anybody came on who he thought was, and if he happened to be listening or in the studio, he'd give him crap about it. And I've got a recording of him. If Gray Barker was a woman, he would have been reduced to tears. I mean, I know Gray Barker was gay, but he keeps hammering at him because Barker had said something. He had half jokingly said, there's a saucer coming that's going to pick us up, and you Jackie and you, John, are invited to take off with us in the flying saucer. And Gleason said, how can you say something so stupid and how can you take this so lightly and joke with us? And Barker was saying, he says everything but look, it was a big joke, dude. Don't take it so goddamn seriously.
Yeah.
Because I was just playing with you in the midst of talking about a bunch of other stuff. And Gleason was saying, well, how can you come out and say something like that? Publish books and be a school teacher, as you say you have been, and run a business like you do. He was, Barker's business was booking films to different drive-ins, I think. How can you do all this and then, you know, and say, and be such a serious individual and then say something stupid like you're going to take us on a flying saucer? And, you know, Barker again, he was like, well, I was just saying something silly. Maybe if it happened, that'd be great. I didn't think it was going to happen. Somebody thought they were going to take us on a ride in a flying saucer. You know, obviously it didn't happen. And, you know, Gleason just, he won't give up. It's like a bulldog holding on. It's like, you know, it was a joke. It was a half-serious joke. We didn't think it was going to happen. We thought it was funny to mention. Why are you taking this so seriously, Mr. Gleason? He's like, and he just won't let it go.
Weird.
It's really funny to hear too. I mean, Gleason was probably there at home drinking a scotch and, you know, trying to tear Barker a new asshole. But it to me it looks it's a poor reflection on Gleason and reinforces everything I always thought about Barker, which was he didn't really believe too much, but he had a lot of fun with the subject, and deep down really wanted to find out what was going on, even though he thought he probably never would.
Yeah, that sounds like the attitude of most of the people that I know and respect in the UFO field, too, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and that was just one aspect of that show, and I'm sure just one aspect of Gleason, because that's the only recording I have of him on the show that I'm aware of. I think Wendy Connors, who does that Faded Discs thing, has a bunch of different Long John Nebel recordings. There's one recording available, I think I put the link up, at archive.org.
Yeah.
Of George Van Tassel on Long John Nebel's show. And so if you want to listen to exactly what he used to sound like, his opening theme, what the show was like, what the format was like, you can go there immediately to archive.org and just type in Long John Nebel and you'll get it.
Nice. I'll dig up a link and have it posted.
Or you can go to my article because there's a link on that one too.
Okay, nice. Well, I'll have a link for that for sure. What about the only other part of the Long John Nebel story I want to ask you about was this whole thing with Candy Jones, which is bizarre. Talk a little bit about the story of Candy Jones, her relationship with Long John Nebel, and the strange CIA mind control element to that whole thing.
Yeah, I hope Adam Gorightly isn't listening to this because he probably knows far more about it than I do. Because I read the book like 10 years ago. I still have it. It's called The Control of Candy Jones. Mm-hmm. Candy Jones was a model and a pinup girl from World War II. And in the 1960s, she was heading a modeling agency because she was too old to model anymore, obviously. And in the mid-'70s, she met Long John in the course of something to do with the show, or maybe she was doing advertising on the station. I'm not sure. And they got married. I think they met each other and they were married like a month later. And you know, Long John was in his 60s and she was in her 40s, I think. But in the book by Donald Bain, Long John started to notice that she was having these strange mood swings, like more than normal for I guess a woman at that time. Mm-hmm. You know, she wasn't pregnant or anything, and I guess she was probably postmenopausal at that point or close to it. But she was, you know, she seemed like she would drop into another personality every once in a while. It was completely different from her, you know, nice, sweet personality that everybody knew her for.
Yeah.
He wanted to find out what the hell this was. And so I'm not sure if she started seeing a psychologist or Long John started putting her in a hypnotic trance. But in the course of these hypnosis sessions, and even a little bit before it sounds like a UFO, you know, like an abduction thing. There's like some things remembered, some things conscious, not all of it's there. They seem to uncover a scenario where she had been approached by somebody in the U.S. military and asked if she would like to do some work for the government, and she said okay. And so what it started out was like, you know, delivering. She used to do USO shows in Korea.
Okay.
So she started delivering messages to various places during her USO things. And then it became more sinister. Apparently she was sent to see some sort of psychologist in Oakland. I can't remember the psychologist's name. It's in the article. And he started hypnotizing her and turning her into kind of a sleeper agent where she would take on a completely different personality. She would put on a wig, and she would go to these other countries. You know, she would be sent off on these missions to other countries, and apparently she was captured a couple times and tortured before being let go. And, you know, very strange, you know, bizarre kind of stories, you know, spy stories. But Jones and Nebel and their psychologist all seem to think that this actually happened. It made Nebel a lot more interested in, you know, conspiracy, mind control, stuff like that, and that kind of stuff creeped into his show as a subject a lot more in the last 2 or 3 years of his when he was on the air because of this episode with his wife. And I think I said this in the article. He publicly said he wanted to go and kill the psychologist in Oakland there that had made her do all this stuff. And there's been a lot of what I didn't say in the article. There's been a lot of controversy about whether this really happened, whether this psychologist actually existed, etc.
Yeah, has anything really, ever since the publication of the book, has anything really come out about all that? Has it been followed up much, or is it sort of just like one of those lost stories?
If I knew, I've forgotten about it. All I know is there was some controversy as to whether that person ever actually existed and this stuff happened, which makes you wonder where she came up with all this stuff in the first place. Because I think somebody had found that there was that. Now that I think of it, that psychologist did exist, and he was in practice in Oakland, and he did have a CIA contract. And the other part of it is there were people at the modeling agency saying that she would go off on trips and wouldn't tell anybody what she was doing and would disappear for days and weeks at a time.
Yeah, so there's some.
And she would never explain it. And since she was the boss, they couldn't really, you know, give her any shit about it because she was the boss.
Yeah.
So there's a little objective evidence that there was something strange going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, the king of late night paranormal, you know, talk radio suddenly has this thing thrust right in the middle of his life.
Yeah, it's really strange in that sense too, because you know, he's already mixed up in the paranormal world, and then this whole weird paranormal element sort of gravitates toward him. It's a synchronicity element. It's just strange, unless there was something in the whole ether there of her mind control that facilitated that connection.
Maybe so. You know, maybe that's where they were attracted to each other for reasons they both were not aware of. Yeah,
like I said, we're going to have a link on there on the page. It's definitely a fascinating article, and big thanks to you, of course, for linking to me and mentioning me at the end. I appreciate it.
Well, you do paranormal radio stuff. I do it, you know, kind of as when I can and when I feel like it. And I've got, you know, kind of these heroes of radio, and one of them's Long John Nebel. And the funny thing was I had to mention Gene Shepard on the same thing because he used to be on the same station. He's another radio hero of mine.
Nice, yeah, and like I said, it's great because not too many people even know the story of Long John Nebel. They kind of think Art Bell started the whole paranormal radio scene, and that's not the case at all. So
I'm sure I've never had a chance to talk to Art Bell off the record or anything like that, but it'd be interesting to find out what he thinks of Nebel, and I'm sure he was aware of him, and if he, you know, it affected the way that he did his shows, because Nebel was very the illustration I have of him at the top of the post, it said, I put down his trademark phrase was, "I don't buy the gaff."
Yeah.
Which meant he didn't believe almost anything that came on the show. He didn't believe in aliens. He didn't believe in psychic stuff. He thought it was, mostly, if not all, smoke and mirrors. And I don't think Bell is exactly that way. I think he does take stock, or did when he was on the air, take stock, at least some stock in some of the things that he talked about on his show.
Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. I think the UFO sighting he had probably had a lot to do with that sort of situation.
Yeah,
as well.
And also I think they're, both of them, Nebel and Bell, were really good at pulling stories out of people and letting people talk and directing the conversation so that it was interesting to the listener, whether they believe the person or not. And that's a good radio person.
Absolutely, definitely. That's how I try to pattern myself. So hopefully
exactly.
I'm on the right track.
Great job.
Well, thank you.
Well, you let me talk. You let me ramble.
I know. Look at all the good stuff we've got.
Yeah, I'm kind of scared about some of the stuff I've said. Look what you did.
Oh, no. I only have like one more big question here, and that's,
Sure.
I was talking with Nick. It's been kind of one of my little sort of pet interests in the last 6 months, 8 months, or whatever, and that's sort of these lost stories of the esoteric world, how some stories become huge and then flame out. I'm thinking about, like, the Bermuda Triangle, spontaneous human combustion. These things were huge, and now they're like barely a blip on the esoteric map. Why do you think some of these stories were so big and then they died out, and sometimes they make a comeback but barely ever, and it seems like some of these stories have had their 50 minutes of fame and aren't big anymore, especially the Bermuda Triangle. Like, that used to be a staple of paranormal world, and now it's like barely mentioned.
Yeah, it's because it's just what you said. Nothing new happens.
Yeah.
People delve into these things as much as they can. If there's nothing new about it that can be dug out of the story, then, that's the end of the story. And the only time something comes back is if there's a new wrinkle or twist or, what if suddenly a passenger liner disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle? Yeah, it'd be a big story again.
Yeah. So we just have to wait for things to change, come around, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of point of view too. There's been a lot of skeptical things about the Bermuda Triangle, and so as soon as somebody finds there's some scientist or somebody who says that they're smart saying they've solved something, that kind of kills something too, whether they've solved it or not.
Yeah.
If they do a good PR campaign and say they've solved it, then they've solved it. You see. Yeah.
And then the sort of follow-up question is, do you have a favorite story like that kind of no one talks about anymore, or mystery like that? And what kind of thing do you think has fallen off the radar that you think is cool that people should talk about?
Something that's fallen off the radar. It's a story. I'm not so sure if I have a favorite. A subject.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
That's fallen off the radar is altered states of mind and the paranormal. Nobody really talks about that too much. Because of the stigma attached to drugs and things like that, people tend to shy away from that. And that's to me, that's cultural blinders because, 100 years ago, all these psychedelics and all that were being used by different cultures were not illegal because nobody knew to make them illegal yet.
Yeah.
And the stigma attached to it has been just from our culture. The thing I keep wanting to bring up, and Nick brings this up too, is that book, the DMT, The Spirit Molecule, by Rick Strassman.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's been other books more recently, like Pinchbeck and a couple other people. I think Jim DeCorn has written on this too. But there's, especially in that book, what's funny is that, I have to give you a little bit of background quickly. It was that Strassman was given a permission by the DEA to do a study with dimethyltryptamine, which is a very powerful psychedelic drug, by injecting it into people and then having them lie on a table in a kind of a medical setting and describe what was going on.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful. The thing is, it goes in your bloodstream, and it's like within probably 10 seconds hits your brain, and you're out. You're not in this reality anymore.
Yeah.
But he said that he almost hated to admit it, and it really started to bother him. That a lot of people, a sizable, amount of the test subject, like 30% of them, were describing things that sounded like alien encounters.
Oh wow.
That sounded like abductions, without the being dragged out of the bed and taking it somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, they're immediately there.
Weird.
And they said that there were these entities there looking at them. Some of them, and the thing was that not all of them had, there were a few of them looked like they had the big heads and all that, but a lot of them looked like insects, and a lot of them didn't really look like anything. They just looked like knots of energy or whatever. But they described a lot of the same things that abductees describe while under the influence of this thing. So what does that tell you?
Interesting, yeah. So you'd like to see more of that discussed and hopefully more research into that kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot because of the stigma. It's like, well, the person was on drugs.
Yeah.
Like, that's not that's a completely Neanderthal attitude to me.
Okay, and what about your interest in the contactee movement? I notice you have a really vivid interest in that. Is that something you'd like to explore more? Maybe put out like a book or something like that, or
I want to put out a book on it, but nobody wants to publish it.
Oh man.
You know what Nick suggested is that I do a book on flying saucer themed and alien themed music, since I've been posting so much of that on the site. But the reason I don't know. People say, "What are you interested in contactees for?" Probably the reason I'm interested in it, the main reason is that most ufologists kind of push it to the back or actively despise it.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me very interested. And the reason it makes me interested is because I think at least some of these people were pretty sincere about what they were saying.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to them, but I think at least a few of them had some sort of experience with something that they couldn't explain, so that, this mold or model was available to them to put their experience into context. And instead of saying, I was taken aboard a craft and examined or whatever, or I just saw something going across the sky or whatever, something affected them to the point where they had to say something. And the model that was available was, friendly people from outer space telling us not to hurt each other or drop bombs on each other and, eat better and all this. Any message to tell people to quit fighting with each other and to treat each other better is fine by me.
Absolutely. Now, do you think what do you think precipitated the change in society, I guess you could say, between went from contactees to abductees, with the Betty and Barney Hill case kind of changed the whole paradigm. Why do you think that changed so much? Because it seems like quite a drastic change from, people were having contact with extraterrestrials and they were, exchanging messages and stuff, to all of a sudden we were kind of like the cattle and they were just taking people and it wasn't as back and forth as it had been before. I'm
not sure what changed that. I think that the public exposure of the Betty and Barney Hill thing, that was what changed it. The perception of the public mind of whatever aliens are was changed by that event and having that book written about them. Maybe there were 20, 30, 80,000 other people had the same experience, but the Hills decided to go talk about it and then said it was okay that this guy write a book about it. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't so much that the events were changing, but how they were being described was? Yeah. I mean, I think that, it's well documented that the way you look at things and the way you perceive things and the way you expect things is the way that they're going to be. And I think that was kind of it was a cultural shift rather than the aliens have decided to do this now. Yeah. Like, we're going to look at this part of it now, so that's what we're going to concentrate on, and that's all we're going to see. And that has dominated the cultural landscape since, when did the book come out, 66? 66, because the abduction happened in 61, I think. Do you think there'll be a contactee turnaround where we'll see that kind of thing shift back around to the other way, or it'll be we'll see some kind of amalgamation of the two, or a whole new... I think we are seeing some kind of amalgamation of the two with some of the exopolitics people. What do you mean by that? Michael Salla, for instance, I think he's kind of the proponent of the kind of love and light alien thing. Yeah. Oh, and he's worked that into philosophy where, if we acknowledge this on a greater level, it could be better for us, in the long run, because it shows us where we should be spiritually and how we should treat each other, etc., which is, that's a contactee message. Yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. The only other question I have is sort of like just sort of a follow-up question to our many interviews we've done already, and that's the Bill Moore MUFON speech. Last I heard, I'm going to keep asking you about this till we can get you on the show and play it. Any news on the Bill Moore MUFON speech? I heard last time we had talked, I think that you had talked to someone who had a copy of it, but it hadn't surfaced yet. Any movement on that? No, I haven't been able to get back in touch with him yet. I think MUFON officially has one, but they're not going to release it.
Oh, man.
You know what? I'm not sure. I think if there is a recording, it's the property of MUFON. So that event was a MUFON event. So I'm not sure if anybody would be allowed to just, start. I guess you could do it for free, but they might want to exploit it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to contact MUFON and find out what the story is, because I want to hear this thing so bad. That's really all I got.
Well, the first person I talked to said he had a videotape of it.
That's what we really want, because then we can see some crazy reactions and stuff.
Yeah, and he's out in the Southwest here somewhere. I see him occasionally, and I've got his number. He said he was going to look for it, and last I talked to him, he said, I couldn't find it where I thought it was. I'll keep looking, which means he'll look for it the next time I bug him.
Yeah.
And I'd be a lot more interested to see a videotape of it because, well, the thing is, you probably only see Bill Moore talking.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Moore wasn't, waving his hands and raving or anything like that. He was very kind of measured throughout the thing. He would, didn't bang on the table or anything like that. But the thing was, he had to keep stopping because people were yelling, and I was sitting in the audience, and it was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Leaving and crying and everything.
Yeah, so that's why the audio would be kind of neat, because then you can maybe hear the people yelling and stuff. It would be kind of cool to hear. Be like Dylan Goes Electric.
Yeah. Where'd you get that crap from, Bill?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We talked about 2007, we talked about 2008, but we really want to know about 2008 for Greg Bishop. What's coming up for you in the horizon? Anything exciting you have planned? Any speaking engagements? Hopefully you'll be back for the baseball special in a couple months here on BOA Audio. But what else do you have?
Definitely. I already bought my tickets for this next season, 25 games.
Nice. What's going on for you in the upcoming year? Anything big planned?
Well, there's the Roswell thing. About Paul Kimball wanting to move Red Star Films out to Hollywood.
I've heard all about it.
Yeah, so he's going to, and I told him I'd help him out with that. So I guess he made me a producer officer or something like that on Red Star.
Nice.
So he's going to come out here at the end of February and start laying the groundwork for that. And with his legal background, I think it'll be a little bit easier for him. And then sometime in October, he says he's going to be out here permanently. So I want to start working with him to produce the kind of UFO documentaries that I want to see, not the ones where you see, 40 more reports of lights flying through the sky and police chasing them, or another person being hypnotized and going through this horrible stuff on camera for everybody to see.
Yeah.
That kind of new ufology stuff that we've been talking about all the way through this show. I want to, and I think Paul wants to start presenting things in a different way for, to kind of tell people that there's a lot more ufology than they've been seeing on TV for the last, 20 or 30 years.
Nice, exciting. So you're going to be in the creative elements to the whole thing, which should be fun, right?
Yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to. And then I'm continuing to, of course, to do UFO Mystic every at least 4 days a week. Between Nick and I, there's something up every day practically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then continue to try and sell another book. And at this point, I don't know how well UFO books. So it's really hard for me to start writing a book when somebody says, well, we're not going to pay you and there's no real due date. It's like, well, what motivation is for me to do anything?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's hard.
So as soon as I get somebody to say yes on any number of 15 or 20 book proposals I've been sending around, then I'll be doing that. And it may be a UFO book and it might not. I don't know.
Hey, yeah, do what you want to do, Don't get stuck in the UFO realm.
No, well, I really don't want to be stuck in the UFO realm because it's really pigeonholed.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be fun to do a UFO book, but it'd also be fun to do a book on something else. I had a lot of fun doing Weird California, and that was a paranormal type book.
Nice. All right, yeah. Well, hopefully I can weasel my way into some Kimball projects and stuff. Maybe you guys can finally get around to help me make my reality show a reality.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. Of course, we have to change everything. We have to move forward and change things because it needs to be, as we've talked about for the last couple hours here.
Definitely, yeah. Well, I'm hoping to someday take over the basic cable paranormal realm with my own show, so hopefully we can get that going someday.
I'm there.
Nice. Well, Greg, I got to thank you so much. I'm sure the listeners are just going to go batshit when they hear all this awesome material that we've had here on the show. As you said, there's always something new at UFO Mystic. It's an outstanding website. If people aren't reading UFO Mystic, they're missing out on just great pieces day in and day out.
Occasionally, we have guest columns on. Brad Steiger's done a couple. My friend Ken Thomas has done one. And I'm looking to have people do more. Maybe you could do one.
Yeah, I definitely do one. I would be totally down with that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, write one and send it to me.
Oh, awesome. Yikes, I'm already... Nice. See, that's what we're talking about. You get a deadline on it, and then you can get going on it. But yeah, like I said...
By next week, there.
Yeah, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. You were one of the first people to be on the show, and back when, we really had to beg and scream and try and get people to come on the show, and you were one of the first people who was just like, yeah, I'll do an interview, sure. So I really appreciate that. You helped us get established and, BoA
I might
Audio.
have been the first. I'm not sure.
What's that?
I think I might have been the first.
Yeah, well, we had worked out the interview back when I was just scheduling the very first people for season 1. So, we were like I think you were like one of the first 5 people I ever interviewed. So I really hugely appreciate that and all the great time we've had talking. And your perspective on the UFO field is awesome. We need more people like you who don't have a dog in the fight, if you will. You aren't married to one side or the other and willing to change things and look at it from a different perspective. So I appreciate that. And
the way to go with the UFO stuff.
Absolutely, you got to. And we'll be talking again in a couple months here for the baseball special. So I guess we'll just wrap it up at that. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Tim. It's one of the most fun interview formats I'm on for any show because people get to say whatever they want.
Nice, exactly.
Or say things like batshit.
That does it for this week's edition of BoA Audio Season 3. Big, super huge thanks to Greg Bishop for coming back on the show and giving us so much time. You can find out more information on Greg Bishop at the following websites, www.ufomystic.com and www.excludedmiddle.com. Don't forget to check out his internet esoteric show, Radio Mysterioso, which can be heard on Sundays from 8 to 10 p.m. Pacific Time at www.killradio.org. So there you go. Check out those sites. Check out Greg's podcast show, Radio Mysterioso, and get to know Greg Bishop. Before we dive into BoA Audio listener feedback, let me give you a couple teasers on stuff that's coming up on the horizon from Binnall of America. For starters, we got a little something called BoA Audio After Hours. This is going to be featuring some of the folks you've heard about here in the close of the program. I've gotten tons of emails over the years from people that want to hear from the BoA staff, and I want to give them a little special treatment, so we're going to have something called BoA Audio After Hours, sort of a little bite-sized mini interviews, something that'll be at the end of the programs and as a standalone sort of spin-off series. I'm looking at getting BoA Audio After Hours up and running hopefully by the end of February, and you'll be able to hear from some of these great folks that I've been thanking week in and week out at the end of the program. Also, we've got another big project that I'm working on, BoA DC. There's not too much I can say about that, except that we'll be breaking new ground. It'll be a whole new sort of medium for BoA, and we're going to be potentially reaching a massive audience of folks who probably haven't heard of BoA just yet, but they're going to hear about it via BoA DC. I can't say too much more about that because I'm hard at work sort of wrapping up the final details of it, but I expect that BoA DC will also hit the streets around the end of this month. So you got a couple of big things to look forward to, BoA Audio After Hours and BoA DC, 2 big projects from Binnall of America that we've been working on here as 2008 began that we expect to see blossom, hopefully, by the end of February, beginning of March. So stay tuned for those. Now we move along to BoA Audio listener feedback. We got a huge stack of letters here that have accumulated over the hiatus, so let's just dive into this week's letter. It comes from Joe. No hometown listed, just Joe. And here's what he has to say. Mr. B, I enjoy your site, especially your archive of MP3s. I enjoyed my first download tonight. It was Jim Mars, and I have read his book Alien Agenda. It is the best one so far. I would like to recommend a good interview for you in the future. The man's name is Art Greenfield, and he is the author of Warning. This book is pretty good. I don't know if you've read it, but it is really scary. I'm in one of Art's Yahoo ET groups, and he is very articulate and sharp. He says that reptilian aliens come here every so often and collect dead human bodies and stock up their motherships with them. That they instigate wars and disease here on Earth. Interesting stuff, huh? Yeah. Anyway, thanks for the access to the MP3s. They are great. Yours truly, Joe. Well, there you go. Thank you very much for writing in, Joe. I appreciate your feedback and your props on the archive of MP3s. Don't forget, folks, those MP3s are there at binnallofamerica.com. Tons of episodes, probably over 70 at this point, so definitely worth checking them out. Thank you so much for the guest suggestion, Joe. This Art Greenfield sounds like quite a character. I'm going to have to look into his book, Warning, and I'm definitely going to see about possibly having him on the show. The reptilian alien story is one we haven't really even scratched the surface on here on the program, but it's one that I find fascinating and frightening, and whether it's true or not, definitely interesting and worthy of exploration. So I'll definitely check out Art's book, and if I dig it, we'll have him on the program at some point in the future, provided, of course, I can get a hold of him and we can get the schedules worked out and all that good stuff. Thanks again for writing in, Joe. Stay tuned, and I hope you dig the new episodes here we're rolling out for 2008. If you would like to be a part of BOA Audio listener feedback, here's the two ways to go about doing it. Either A, write to boaaudio@hotmail.com, or simply go to binnallofamerica.com, click the contact button on the left-hand side of the screen. That'll put you on the contact page with all of the pertinent information on getting in touch with me. Either one of those methods will put your correspondence in the ever-growing pile of BOA Audio listener feedback letters to be read and responded to on a future edition of BOA Audio. Up next, of course, is the thanks. I gotta give extra special thanks this week here for the great BOA staff, Leslie, Chiron, Arlie, Joe V, Tina Senna, and our newest member, Rochelle Hawks. During the hiatus, the vast majority of the stuff at the website was courtesy of the outstanding BOA staff. They carried Binnall of America throughout January, much as they did throughout the summer when the audio series was off the air. I can't thank them enough. They are the heart and soul of this website. They are the fuel that makes the machine run, and as I said, they carried the website on their back throughout January, so I can't give them enough props for all their help and support with the website and the audio series. If you haven't checked out the columns at binnallofamerica.com, you're seriously missing out. These are some top-notch reading material and great insight on a wide variety of esoteric topics. As we like to say here on the program, week in and week out, if you're just listening to BOA Audio and you're not reading the columns at binnallofamerica.com, you're only getting half the story. Check out BOA, check out the columns, and find out why so many people are making binnallofamerica.com a part of their everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. I know what you're saying right now. You're saying, Tim, I love this show and I want to help out, but how can I do that? Here's the answer, my friend. There's two ways to help us out. The first method is pretty simple. You go to binnallofamerica.com, click the PayPal button, and make a donation via PayPal. No donation is too small, and all donations go towards helping keep BOA Audio and Binnall of America up and running and freely available to all of our great listeners the world over. The other method is also pretty simple. You go to the website, you click the merchandise button, you'll see it's flashing with the cool BOA line of merchandise. Click that, buy some merchandise. We get some money back from that from the Cafe Press folks, and that money goes into the till for BOA. We only got one little thing left to do here, and that's, of course, preview next week's program. Next week on the show, we're going to delve into the ghost genre for the very first time here on BOA Audio with our guest, Larry Flaxman, founder of the Arkansas Paranormal and Anomalous Studies team, known as RPAST. We're going to be discussing the ins, the outs, the creation, the evolution, and the research methods of the RPAST group. We're going to get Larry's critical thoughts on some of the staples of ghost hunting, like EMF meters, EVPs, and orbs. His thoughts, trust me folks, are going to really surprise some of you what he has to say about some of these big pillars of the ghost hunting community. It's a tremendously enlightening take. Plus, we're going to have a ton of big picture discussion on the ghost hunting field, its explosion in popularity, and the pluses and minuses of the rapid growth of that esoteric genre. It's definitely a new area of coverage for BOA Audio, but we managed to retain our same flavor for in-depth esoteric discussion. That's next week. Larry Flaxman, founder and president of the Arkansas Paranormal and Anomalous Studies team. Tremendous stuff. Very good interview. I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback on this one. We've had many people request sort of us getting into the ghost realm, so we're finally going to do it here next week on the program. Stay tuned to BOA for a little more in-depth preview of that, and of course teasers for future episodes of the program. We're going to be doing a few more ghost episodes in this cycle, and in the not too distant future, a major international ufology episode with a guest who'll be giving his first ever American interview on BOA Audio. We're going to establish a beachhead on a whole new continent that we've never even touched on here on the program before, but we're going to do it in a couple of weeks here on the show. Stay tuned to the program and the website for information on that. Of course, as I said, next week, Larry Flaxman of our past talking about ghost research. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up so I can finish up putting the episode here together and get it online for you and hopefully break our streak here of late episodes being posted. I'm very excited to be back, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on these episodes of BOA Audio that we've taped in January. Thank you so much, folks, for listening. Thank you so much for being patient with us and waiting for the return of the program. Thank you for your tremendous support and loyalty. This program would be nothing without our great listeners. Trust me, I know that, and I appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart. Until you hear from me next week, this is Tim Binnall, thanking you for listening and signing off.